Welcome to the Shipping Podcast, where I meet interesting maritime professionals sharing their passion for the shipping industry and their everyday job. I am your host. My name is Lena Gothberg. Hello, Shipping Podcast listeners, and welcome to episode 247. It's been a while since I've recorded a solo episode. So it's a long time since you've heard from me and what I'm thinking about. I had a hectic spring and summer, so I didn't have the time to record solo episodes. But I have had some interesting guests on the Shipping Podcast for you to listen to. I hope you have enjoyed listening to them as much as I enjoyed chatting with them. You probably noticed that the conversation with Erik Froste, who went on an assignment to Ukraine, was released twice. And you might wonder why. Why didn't I just replace the first version with the lousy sound quality with the second one? Well, there are more things to consider than you think. The first episode was released and came onto your feed, your mobile, or however you listen to this. And if it was on your feed, it might be waiting to be listened to later. So it's in the queue. If I had replaced the audio file with the second version, the ones who had already downloaded version number 1 wouldn't have received version number 2. I could also have taken down version 1 and just left it like that. But then the listeners would have received a message that there was something wrong, and I couldn't explain that to them. So now you can listen to version number 1 with a poor sound quality, or skip it and go directly to version number 2 and hear the entire story from Ukraine. It is more complicated than you think to be a host and a producer of a podcast. But the conversation Erik and I had about his trip to Ukraine is so important. So we needed to get it right. As I said in that episode, people in the maritime industry are resilient. We're used to working internationally, and we know the importance of a supporting network. We must be able to support our maritime colleagues in Ukraine in different ways. Let's put our thinking caps on and come up with a few ideas. A few days ago, I was approached by some people who wanted my help starting a podcast. We discussed a few items, and I asked about their goal and what kind of podcast they wanted to produce. One of the participants on that Zoom call said, "I don't want it to be all about success. Everyone always portrays the good side of everything. It would be more interesting to hear about mistakes that are made." I couldn't agree more. So now I have decided to share a few mistakes from my podcast host and producer career with you. Let me start by saying that I have made many mistakes, especially in the beginning. When I started this podcast, I needed to learn how to produce. All I knew was that I wanted to listen to a podcast about shipping. Over the years, I have actually learned a new trade. This is quite far from being a marine insurance underwriter or a marine insurance broker. But it's closer to working with business intelligence, as I did for a while. But then I wasn't listened to when I suggested new things that will make a difference on a global scale and that people would have to take into consideration when it comes to how to develop a business plan. To be honest, I had no idea what I was getting into when I started the Shipping Podcast 9 years ago. In the podcasting industry, everyone who made it over the first 10 episodes and continued after that producing episodes feels the shame of the first 10 episodes. Because that is when you are like a fish on land, just trying to find your bearings and understand all the details that goes into this. The sound quality is terrible. Your interview technique is crap. And you're just interviewing guests who are easily accessible. Many podcasters delete the first 10 episodes. The brave ones leave them for the listeners to hear some development. I left my 10 first episodes. When I started, I was advised to make 4 episodes and release them at once. That way, I could serve listeners with different tastes. I mean, not everyone is interested in the same topics. You all know which episodes I'm referring to. The first episode is with Captain Niels V. Pedersen, the captain on board the Maersk McKinney Møller, the largest container ship in the world at that time, when she called the port of Gothberg on her maiden voyage in 2015. That was such an experience. I didn't even have my own equipment. I had borrowed the microphone and a headset. And Captain Niels was such a nice guy. In episode number 2, I met with Jonathan Wichmann, the social media wizard working for Maersk. When we were supposed to meet, Jonathan decided where to meet and explained to me how to get there in Copenhagen. I had no idea that he had chosen a boating club with a restaurant inside a tent. When I arrived, I realized that the wind was a strong gale. But there I was. Jonathan had taken the time, and I had no backup plan or experience. So we just had to do it. Episode number 2 has a poor sound quality, but the content is brilliant. After a while, I realized that the most important thing is to have sound quality like the best podcasts. Those are the ones I compete with for time. I myself cannot stand the poor sound quality. If I find a new podcast that I want to listen to, I just cannot listen to poor sound quality. So to reach that level of quality of the sound, I have studied, I have learned, I have asked podcasting people, I have watched YouTube videos, and I have taken classes. Now I have reached so far that I will rather do take 2 of an interview if the sound quality needs to improve, as I did with Erik. I'd rather do all the work all over again. Because I want you to listen to a good sound quality. I have conducted interviews in conference halls, hotel rooms, offices, on board ships, and in hotel lobbies. Did you know that there is always music in hotel lobbies? You only hear it if you're recording and find it very disturbing when listening back. I have developed a kind of audio allergy to lobby music. I hate it, and I hear it immediately when entering a lobby. Maybe that is something that goes with the trade, I don't know. I have made many more significant mistakes than this one. Once I conducted an entire interview with the CEO of a shipping company, only to find out that I had forgotten to press record. And I didn't realize it until I came home. So I had to ask him for another time and do it all over again. That was so embarrassing. And I found out later that I was the talk of that company for a long time. I suppose you remember when the pandemic hit. I had to decide what to do with my podcast. Should I drop it, or should I try to do interviews virtually? After discussing this with my knowledgeable editor and some other experts, I decided to use the video tool Zoom for recording. I also decided to do interviews with people far away, in places where I probably will never travel. I conducted a few interesting interviews in different parts of the world, gaining insight into how the pandemic spread. If you are one of the loyal listeners, you know what I mean. One of my guests was a woman with a long hair and a pearl necklace. She wore a headset on her ear, talking into her mobile. And I could hear how her hair and necklace made some noise every time that she moved. I asked if she had another headset, preferably a corded one, but unfortunately, she didn't. When I invite my guests, I ask them to prepare by finding a corded headset to their computer, not a Bluetooth headset or AirPods. I mean, you can almost always hear when people are using Bluetooth connection, as they sometimes sounds like if they're zooming out, and that is when the connection is lost to the computer or the Zoom call. Some guests do what I tell them, and some don't. Other podcast hosts that I know send their guests a headset and a microphone in the post to make them sound their best. I have not yet used that approach. After all, I am a hobby podcaster, and there is a limit to what I can do for my listeners. I have a fantastic editor, Jen, who almost always gets me out of trouble. Jen lives in Indianapolis and is a musician and a podcaster. She knows how to make me sound better, brighter, and more in tune with my podcast. She also helps me out whenever I haven't been tough enough on my guests. I ask for their time, and I make them shine like stars in the maritime industry. They need to follow my instructions. If they don't, they will hear their own mistakes themselves. I don't think I should reveal more mistakes now. You might not want to listen to the shipping podcast in the future then. But if you want to give me a few comforting words about everything that I've told you, you can always drop me a line at hello@shippingpodcast.com. I would appreciate that. But until the next time, from me to you, over and out.
Every conversation
matters.